I am on. Good morning. Welcome to the Grants Pass Center for Spiritual Living. We've been expecting you. Thank you for not disappointing us. Well, we have some wonderful things to discuss this morning. Did you see our topic? It's on Prejudice and Sin. What? I was like, okay. Well, let's metaphysically tackle these two things in one talk, right? It couldn't be split into two different talks. We're going to handle it all right here and right now. So, let's get clear. On Science of Mind, page 110 and 111, it says, "There is no sin but a mistake, and no punishment but an inedible consequence. We are not punished for our sins, but by them. As we communicate the difference, a spiritual openness naturally emerges." So, when I first came into this teaching, I had all this energy around sinning, right? And whenever anybody would say, that's a sin, I would just feel just terrible. Just like I was taught that I was never going to be a non-sinner, right? That you were sent, because you were born into sin, and there was no changing that. And I was like, oh, well, I might as well have fun, right? I mean, I misunderstood the entire sinning idea, right? And so when I came into this teaching, I heard a teacher say the acronym for sin, S-I-N, is self-induced nonsense. And that worked for me, because I was like, I've been judging myself by what I thought was a sin that was keeping me from completely expressing myself in ways that, it seemed like all the fun stuff was sinful. But when you really understand what it is, it's not what you think it is. So I looked at prejudice, and that means to prejudge something, or conviction prior to investigation. How often do we do that? I know, ouch. Or we go, that's not right. And we go, well, why do I think that? You follow it back and you go, it's some belief that I have in something that really isn't true. And I have prejudged it because I don't like it. So let's first talk about the S-I-N idea. And this is from a book by Ernest Holmes called The Creative Mind. We are not downtrodden, miserable sinners, born in sin and conceived in iniquity and shame. Some to go to heaven and some to go to hell, and all to be eternally glory of God. This is a lie. We are the glory of God. But heaven and hell are states of consciousness. It always was a lie and always will be a lie. But as long as we believe in a lie, it seems to be present with us. Perhaps Emerson was right when he said, ignorance is the only sin there is. And if so, wisdom is the only solution. The more we know, the more we become wise in what works in the world and what works for us or not, the less we feel sinful. This is from Love and Law by Ernest Holmes, and it says, if God knew sin, God would be a sinner. It's like, oh, wow. So this is a human-made perception, a judgment upon certain actions that are misunderstood. Science of Mind on page 440. But Jesus was wise in his ways of the world, as well as in heavenly wisdom, and he counseled his followers against attempting to help others when they wished no help. He said, and when ye come into a house, salute it. And if the house is worthy, let your peace come upon it. But if it not be worthy, let your peace return to you. This is a lesson which sincere students of truth often discover to their great chagrin. People do not always receive their message, and when this happens, there should be no controversy, no argument, and no sense of disturbance, but abiding in the conviction of the ultimate acceptance of the truth by all. They should let their peace return unto themselves and go calmly on their way, undisturbed, unprejudiced, non-combative, but certain of themselves, certain of the truth upon which they stand. Are we certain upon the truth on which we stand? And as we get more and more available as a student of truth, and you wouldn't be in this room if you weren't a student of truth, you are looking and you are finding, and something is happening. Something wonderful is happening as you. So I want to address this word sin first. It's an archery term. And what it means is you've missed the mark. I loved learning that the original meaning of this was missing the mark. And being an archery term, it referred to one missing the bullseye in the target. If you aimed at the bullseye and you missed the red mark in the middle, if you anywhere outside of there, you sinned. You missed the mark. When an archer misses that target, I can't help imagine that they would hang their head in shame, call themselves a bad person, and give up archery. What I can imagine is that instead, he would examine why he missed the target, re-aim, and try again with the new information. Maybe we need to turn our hand a little different, or pull back a little harder, or adjust something in our life so we could hit the mark. That makes more sense to me than, oh, I'm just a bad person because I didn't hit the bullseye. This is a good lesson to apply in our lives. We don't shame ourselves for making mistakes. Instead, we do that ancient and powerful practice of introspection. We look at ourselves. We figure out where we erred, and we try again. You get back on the horse if you fall off. You don't just say, well, I'm never going to ride a horse again, although it may hurt. But we need to figure out what we did wrong. And then we sin no more because we hit the mark. Usually, a good archer will practice again and again so that they can hit the bullseye. So let's go deeper now into the metaphysical interpretation of the parts of Genesis story. You know, Genesis, that story in the Bible. So follow me here. We weren't born in sin as sinners, okay? But that's up to you to believe for yourself. Instead, we were born with the ability to choose, and sometimes in our choices, we make mistakes. It happens. It's part of expressing. It's part of choosing. This is what the great Genesis story is all about. So the tree of knowledge of good and evil represents the mind's discerning capabilities, our free will to choose and select from that tree of knowledge. We get to choose what we want to know, and we educate ourselves in the areas that we choose. The serpent tempted Eve. The subtle crawling serpent symbolizes our one aspect of mind, the intellect that looks at, judges, and draws conclusions from the appearance only. The intellect may view appearances of both good and evil and tempt the individual to a belief in duality, that there's only one way or another. The two serpents intertwined represents the two aspects of mind, conscious and subconscious. Adam and Eve's tasting of the forbidden fruit is a belief in that duality and was the original sin, the mistaken choice. The events that follow in Genesis 3 symbolize the consequence to an individual when they err, missing the mark. They appear to sin. This act also illustrates desire arising at the subconscious level. Adam was sent out of Eden. Man is driven from perfect harmony, Eden, and from enjoying the fullness of life, eating from the tree of life, as long as he continues to trust only in his intellect, to sin, to feel pain, and miss the mark. The message here is to trust our intuition when making decisions, not only rely on our intellect. There are two energies working here, and if we just rely on the intellect, we will miss the mark every time. It's when we go to hit the bullseye that we use the intellect and position ourselves properly, but we imagine ourselves hitting the bullseye. That feeling nature is where the magic is. That something comes over us that allows us to relax into what we're doing and starts to sing our song within us. And all of a sudden, we came out of our intellect. You have to intellectually know how to do something, but there comes a point when the magic takes you over. And that is when you have engaged both yin and yang, positive and challenge, and you hit the bullseye. So let's go a little deeper as we talk a little bit about being prejudiced, about conviction prior to investigation. If we were to look outside and we noticed that the street was wet, we might assume that it had rained, right? That's a clear assumption. It's wet outside. It must have rained. We might get out our umbrellas and rain gear and bundle up, even though it's July. But what if this were not the case? What if a water truck had gone down the street and sprayed water, applied water to the pavement, and it appeared, if we just looked at the street, that it had rained, but that's not what had happened. But we went around telling everybody that it rained, right? We had a conviction prior to investigation, didn't we? That might leave the same appearance as if it had rained. And then getting an umbrella would not serve the situation, would it? If a truck just watered the street. So we prejudge the situation based on a false assumption. And we need to get all the facts before we leap to a conclusion. So I'll share a story of this with you, my experience of prejudging a situation where I had a roommate at my house, and we shared cupboard space. And of course, when you're sharing a refrigerator with someone, you know how that goes sometimes. Something will come up missing that you really wanted that morning for breakfast. And of course, you blame your roommate, hey, where's the rest of the almond milk, right? Or I had this certain type of beans that I wanted with my meal, and that can was not there. And I knew that they had eaten my beans. The can was missing. It was gone. It was not where I had put it when I got it back from the store. And we'd been over this several times, right? We had laid down ground rules and signed contracts, and we were not to eat each other's food, right? This was a big deal, right? When you only have so many Pop-Tarts, you know, when there are only so many Pop-Tarts to go around and you are counting on that before your morning drive, it's disappointing. So we had a clear understanding. And I had not said anything to them, but you know that kind of cold feeling, like, yeah, have a great day. And they're like, what's wrong? Because last night I did not have my beans, and this morning I don't have a Pop-Tart, right? Well, weeks later, as I was straightening up the cupboard, I noticed behind the sauerkraut had been pushed my can of beans. That somehow it had just gotten moved and I didn't look. And I was treating this person under the assumption for weeks that they had eaten my beans. And you know, I was feeling really upset about it, right? Like, them and they're eating my barbecued baked beans. I hope it was good. I hope it was good for you. I hope you enjoyed those beans. You know, I was like looking in the trash for the can, right? Gonna prove, you know, gonna take the evidence to them, you know, but I never, and I realized that I had prejudged them. And then I had to do an amends, and I had never blamed them for it, but I had to do an amends because of the way I treated them. Right? I was like, hey, I just want you to know that I found the can of beans. And they're like, what can of beans? What are you talking about? But you can understand that I thought that it had rained. And I bundled up. Now, where in our lives have we possibly done something like this? Where we accuse someone of doing something prior to investigating what the truth was. We heard something about somebody and we judged them thinking that that was the way that they were. When the person that got the information had gotten it from an unreliable source that didn't like that person's shoes and was judging them because of their shoes and created a big story about how they're probably a bad person in life. And we got that information and judged them as a bad person in life because somebody else didn't like their shoes. But we do this sort of thing once in a while. Sometimes it happens. So my moral to that story is buy 2 cans of beans. So that even if you think someone takes them, you will have your can of beans. Or look at everything in the cupboard before you think someone is guilty of eating your beans, okay? So, when working with others, we are careful not to be prejudiced. In other words, we don't judge them when they appear not to receive our help. We don't give advice, and we don't even try to help if they don't wish to be helped. But we do acknowledge that many of the people who come to us may not know how to ask for help. And so we create a doorway that allows them to do so. We become open. So that if you are that place where someone can ask for help, it is easy for them to walk through that doorway. We do this by being compassionate, open, willing, and listening. Forgiving them, for they know not what the heck they're doing sometimes, right? We recognize that when we are feeling like we have sinned or have been prejudiced towards someone, it could be that those feelings are a nudge, a request from God, Great Spirit, Source Energy, within each of us to examine and take responsibility for our own thoughts and actions. Our own thoughts and actions, not someone else's. Or just another stumbling block to trip over. And it's our choice. We can either use it as a stepping stone to know more, or we can fall down and be the victim of, they always do it to me. Don't you know it? They always do it to me. And it's our choice. So where are you? And this isn't to judge. This is just to check in. Where are you when you find yourself in a silly mistake? When you have spilt the milk in your life, so to speak? Do you spontaneously fall into a rant to yourself? Because I was really good at that. Boy, I could call myself some really interesting names. I was like, where did that come from? Where did that energy of being upset with myself because I made a silly mistake come from? And once I realized that I believed that everything was God, that if I was calling myself those names, that I was speaking to the infinite, about the infinite, I was like, ooh, I have to be very careful on how I treat myself when I'm not having my best bowling game, right? Because I can be really upset with myself. So I've learned to be creative with myself when I find that I'm not on my game, and go, wow, you did that like nobody else could do it. You messed that up better than anybody I've ever seen. I'm going to take some pictures of how bad you messed that up. I want to see that for later, because that's a work of art that only I can do. So what in your life have you thought was a disaster that turned out to be a magnificent work of art? Because everything we do, we grow from. It's all in all how we look at it. So, in conclusion, this week, I want you to pay attention. Feel the feeling that comes up when you feel that you have sinned or missed the mark. And don't be so easy to crucify yourself, as it were. Take a moment and just go, wow, look how creative I am. Look at it differently and honor yourself, because nobody could do it like you can. You are a work of art. There is nothing in the universe like you, and only you can do it the way you can do it. Use that as a sign to move within and become aware of what the real message is for you. Because there's always, in every challenge, a message. We need to look at the message and get the pearl of wisdom out of it. If we don't get the wisdom out of it, what happens? Comes back around. Same song, different verse, a little bit louder and a little bit worse. And you go, I thought I handled this. Well, there's more to know. So, consider the real message that may be at the root of what is before you, and take the time to move into the next greater expression of yourself by honoring your challenges. Not to invite more, but to acknowledge the energy that can send you into the next greatest yet to be. That is how we handle prejudice and sin. And so it is. Amen. Thank you. Thank you. So I'd like to take you on a little imaging experience. If you were following our teaching, we're going to close our eyes for just a second and go within and have a little prayer. So let's bring ourselves center. And I invite you to bring to your conscious awareness of whatever you believe the infinite is to you. Christ consciousness, or Great Spirit, source energy, God, whatever you want to call it, it is yours. You get to make it up. Because there is a power that has created all that is. as we acknowledge that there is something going on, we draw ourselves into that picture as part of the creation of life. Each one of us a divine expression of the awesome power of the universe and its ability to manifest. I invite you to turn into that power. To turn over to that power any challenge, any desire of healing, any situation. Just turn it over. And as we do, we release our grip and open our hand and our heart, knowing that there is a way, there is a power that is working through that way. So I speak my word about prayer, blessing anyone anywhere who has asked for prayer, knowing that whatever modality that may be, typed or written or spoken, or perhaps in the subconscious regions of our mind where we just said, please help me, that power is now activated and moving, surging into every place where there is a so-called need. I know that the infinite is already there. And that whatever needs to have happen, whatever energy needs to be there, is there now, active and doing what it needs to do. That the miracle of healing is happening. So I call it forth into the world of form. So grateful for this time, this space, and this place. Our heart is filled with the gratitude of life, for having life and expressing life and love. We place these words directly into the law with love, knowing that they are acted upon in a way that is identifiable and returns to us filled to overflowing with miraculous loving energy. So we claim it. We say yes, and we let it go, completely releasing this word, for it is already done, as we affirm by saying together, and so it is. Thank you.